So my name's Elijah. Met a few of you today. It's been awesome learning about all of your projects. So thank you for sticking around to hear about mine. This In Real Lab is a new project that I've been working on. So my background is as a molecular genomicist, trained as a molecular cellular developmental biologist. And after grad school, so I'll give you a little bit of introduction of how I ended up with In Real Lab. After grad school, I started a cannabis genomics lab in my garage. Did that for about 6 years doing diagnostic testing, developed an ancestry test for cannabis. And instead of going the route of Ancestry, 23andMe that many of you saw earlier, always decided to take the position that we were consultants. We didn't own the customer data, just baked it into our T&Cs. The customers own their data. And this led to me forming a DAO, and it was DAO governed data marketplace. That whole thing kind of went up in smoke. Still working on the DAO, but it turns out it's really hard to run a diagnostic lab, especially when you're a research scientist for 6 years. So we ended up shutting that down, but I still have the actual lab. So down in Santa Barbara, we have In Real Lab, and that is where this presentation has come from. And I'll tell you about a little experiment that I'm doing now. So In Real Lab, the goal is to empower citizen scientists. So I taught a lot during grad school, TA'd all 7 years. I went back as an instructor afterwards. And I firmly believe that anybody can learn anything they set their mind to. And that if you're given the opportunity and someone that believes in them, right? So that's kind of my perspective and my philosophy for turning my diagnostic lab into a educational program. So what we're going to be doing with In Real Lab is focusing on citizen scientists, people with DeSci projects that need access to lab space and renting it out as a co-working space, and then empowering the people that are renting out the space to then develop their own courses. And we're going to do it with verifiable credentials so that they can demonstrate they have a very particular set of skills. I asked if you're having fun, I meant it. So our educational curriculum is going to cover, it's going to start with some virtual courses, right? Be accessible to anybody, sort of like the Coursera model where you can access all the content for free, but then there's going to be a fee to get the verifiable credential. And that's going to be sort of the revenue model for that. But we do have a physical lab and did produce a bunch of DNA collection kits and materials and things like that for testing. So we're going to be doing hybrid courses where people that enroll in the course will be shipped a kit where they can do DNA extractions, they can learn plating, and they can even send samples back to the lab to have them run in aggregate and then come back for a future course and analyze the data. So the first course we're going to be doing for a hybrid course is kombucha metagenomics. So anybody who enrolls in the course will be growing kombucha using the local spores in the air, just sort of not seeding it with kombucha from the store or something like that. So hopefully we'll have samples from around the world that we can then pull when they send them back to the lab. We'll analyze them, get the metagenome sequenced, and then they can come back for a future course, analyze the data, and it would be included as authors on the paper. And furthermore, once they get some sort of verifiable credentials, or a few the early people in the lab are going to be people I know, they can come into the lab themselves and actually host IRL in real life boot camps. So the whole idea of this actually started with people in Cannabis Genome DAO asking me to teach boot camps to get people ready for the cannabis industry. Or to learn more about how this testing is being done. So there was actually just already demand for this sort of thing, people asking for these kind of classes. And I was like, all right, that seems like a good idea. So if you know anybody that's interested in learning about this, that needs access to lab space, really just trying to be as flexible as possible and support projects. So the lab itself is fully equipped, molecular genomics lab, providing support in terms of reagents on stock, in stock, and just like experimental design support. And hopefully it'll be a good collaborative environment. And the real goal is there to train people who are interested in things that may not have either access to traditional institutions, either financially or in a different country, and get them ready to join the job force, and then hopefully get job placements and get citizen scientists working in scientists. So part of this is just creating content. So I've also launched a podcast called DeSci Party. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll be hosting an interview with Jocelyn Pearl tomorrow morning. And yeah, just trying to get more educational content out about science, DeSci, citizen science. So a little bit about the actual co-working space itself. That's me in the lab. So for any of you that don't work in a lab, I just wanted to include some fun visuals. And yes, we play music in the lab. I asked if you were having fun. Oh, I can't advance the slides. You're stuck. Thank you.
That's it. Go to the next slide. No. Oh. Yeah, let's see if it works.
There we go. Cool. So the whole idea is also to really empower these people that are going to be coming into the lab to be their own PI, right? Most people think to start a lab costs millions of dollars. I think that, we know many of us know that it's really hard to come by science funding. I think it's possible to fund your own science. I mean, many of us learned this in grad school, right? You can TA your way through grad school. I think that should be continued to be possible and more accessible to more people. So that's what I'm trying to provide with IRL, with these boot camps. The instructors of the boot camps will get to keep the majority of the profit. They get to run their boot camps, essentially be their own PI, have the access to this lab space to run their experiments when they're not teaching. And access to this network. So the ability to recruit students easily for their courses and just kind of be able to focus more on their research and basically fund themselves through teaching. So there's, a couple of examples to compare this to, and these images are just fun images that I took of. These are actually a central nervous system of Siona intestinalis that I took pictures of under fluorescent microscope. So because we're down in Santa Barbara, right by the water, so we can work on fun invertebrates. So there's a couple other examples to compare to of, sort of instructor profit sharing systems, right? We're all familiar with like Udemy, Skillshare, Coursera, I mentioned earlier. Most of these, leave very small amounts of profit to the instructor. Our goal with IRL is to do basically about 80-20. Again, this is being developed in practice, so I think that's pretty good revenue share. So just kind of trying to make it as familiar to the current paradigms of Web3 as possible, using a Discord, using a Notion, hopefully using a Charmverse, shout out. So that's a wonderful software to basically issue these bounties where students can submit assignments, instructors can submit their lesson plans. We'll be using LearnCard for verifiable credentials, and we have a physical laboratory and working on token and governor contracts. So I won't say too much about verifiable credentials because we've already discussed those plenty today. But for the token and governor contracts, so I'm a DAO degen turned regen. I love DAOs. I started working full-time in DAOs over the past year. My hypothesis here for this experiment in decentralized education is to decentralize governance over the physical and digital infrastructure for not just the education, but the research as well. So part of the philosophy for Cannabis Genome DAO was not your lab, not your data, right? When you're sending your DNA to a lab, they do have it still on their server. They are still generating that data. There is that point in there of vulnerability. What if the people that are sending their DNA can come do the experiment themselves? They have governance and ownership over that infrastructure themselves. So that's kind of where I think things are going to end up going with this, and we'll see. So stay tuned for IRL 2. And we are recruiting instructors now. So that's it. Thank you. Oh, and there's 2 other confirmed instructors that are developing courses already besides myself, and 1 other on the fence. So got a good little cohort of instructors getting started, and hopefully you'll be seeing courses from us starting in January and having people in the lab as well and starting in January.
Elijah, that was incredible.